I cheated with my brother-in-law and tried to rob the family, but my children discovered it and took revenge by exposing everything with a video that ended my life. My name is Isabella, I am 42 years old, and I am an intensive care nurse. For almost 20 years, I have been or was married to Roberto, a 45-year-old man, heir to a family construction company. He is the type of husband that society considers a good partner, hardworking, stable, generous. Next to us lived Ricardo, 46 years old, an insurance manager and husband of my sister-in-law Susanna, 43 years old, a laboratory technician and my best friend for years. Our houses were practically mirror images, built on the same land that his parents gave us before we got married. Our children grew up together, playing, studying, and learning to live as if they were one big family. Everything seemed perfect on the outside, and maybe that is why it took me so long to realize what was missing on the inside. On weekends, we had barbecues in the backyard. The children ran on the lawn while the adults drank beer and talked about life. Susanna and I were inseparable, sisters by affinity and marriage. The relationship with my husband was stable, secure, but cold. He was always more focused on work and the practical tasks of the house, and over time our marriage became a logistical partnership. We slept together, but we did not touch each other affectionately. Conversations became lists of things to do, the kisses informal. The only thing that kept us together was the love for our children, but even that seemed more like a project than a lived emotion. I did not say anything. I felt this hole growing little by little. There were 5 children, Javier, 18, my firstborn with Roberto, and the twins Rafa and David, 17, sons of Susanna and Ricardo. Besides them, my twin daughters, Clara and Diana, 16, inseparable from Aunt Susanna since they were little. We raised them all as siblings. During the pandemic, we established a home study system, backyard camps, and even themed parties to keep ourselves sane. The 5 teenagers were close, fun, and affectionate. Sometimes I felt that their family was more of a family among themselves than I was with my own husband. It began to affect me in ways that even I did not understand at the time. I felt like an intruder in my own house, a piece out of place in a puzzle assembled by others. I remember that on his days off, Roberto would sit on the balcony with his cold beer, looking at the garden as if he were the king of his own world. This irritated me for no clear reason. Maybe because he was satisfied while I felt I was slowly fading away. I was useful, yes. I took care of everyone, solved problems, prepared food, kept the house running, but no one looked at me with desire, with tenderness, with attention. Not even Susanna realized that I was dying inside. I did not say anything. I smiled. I played my role as a good wife, a good mother, a good neighbor. But it was only an appearance. Inside, I felt alone, invisible. With Ricardo, it was different. He listened to me. At first, it was just casual conversations during family dinners or when he would pass through the kitchen to get more beer. He made jokes, he looked me in the eyes, he praised my work, and I, as needy as I was, began to open up to him. We talked about children, about politics, about mental health. He also said that Susanna was distant, that he felt like a guest in his own house. Our outbursts became confidences, and the confidences began to have ulterior motives. Nothing physical yet, but something had changed. And I knew it, even without admitting it. I know that many people will hate me just for this beginning. Perhaps with reason. But I needed to tell everything with all the details because no one cheats overnight. Betrayal begins in the mind, in the absence, in the void that no one sees. It begins in the silence of the room, in the touch that does not come, in the gaze that never meets yours. I am not apologizing, I am just trying to explain. When I looked at our family, everything seemed perfect. But too much perfection is sometimes just a cover to hide the deepest cracks. And ours were already everywhere. There was no specific moment when everything turned. It was a slow and subtle accumulation, like water that drips silently until it overflows. Ricardo and I had already crossed the line of emotional comfort, although we had not yet done anything physical. It started with a pat on the shoulder that lasted half a second too long. A smile was exchanged when no one was looking, a message outside of ours with an ambiguous emoji. Small gestures that to anyone else would seem harmless, but for me, who was thirsty for attention, this was a feast. I began to look forward to these moments. I dressed up more when I knew I would see him. I felt alive again. Ricardo did not hide it anymore either. He started to seek me out alone. He would invent excuses to come to my house. He would say he needed help with something simple and would stay. Sometimes he would touch my waist when he walked behind me in the kitchen. Sometimes he would call me beautiful as if trying to make a joke, but with the face of someone telling the truth. And I let him. I went along because I liked it, because it made me feel wanted again. It did not take long for our casual encounters to become a ritual. We exchanged glances during dinners and, at night, I relived every second in my thoughts while my husband slept beside me, oblivious. The first kiss happened in his car. It was late. We had gone out together by chance after work. He dropped me off near the house, but instead of opening the door, we stayed there in silence. Old, melancholic music was playing on the radio, and he simply turned his face and kissed me, without warning, without hesitation. It was a long, slow, innocent kiss. When it ended, I smiled. I did not cry, I did not regret it, I did not panic. I felt relief. I felt like I was waking up from an emotional coma. For the first time in a long time, I felt that someone saw me as a woman, not as a piece of furniture in the house. After that, there was no turning back. And we did not even want to. We started making excuses, trips to the supermarket, doctor's appointments, meetings with friends that never existed. We created false routes, detailed justifications, calculated schedules. We arranged everything by cell phone, deleting messages shortly after. We used apps with passwords. We turned off our children's trackers. Always one step ahead. We thought of every detail with such care that we felt invincible. We laughed at the lies told with naturalness. We slept in remote motels, in an apartment he rented with money embezzled from the company, or even in the back seat of the car. It was dirty, it was risky, it was wrong. But the more forbidden it was, the more alive it made us feel. Of course there was guilt. Sometimes, after sex, I would look at the ceiling and think about what I was doing to my family. I thought about the children, Susanna, Roberto. But Ricardo would hug me and whisper that we deserved to be happy, that we were not killing anyone. And I believed him. I convinced myself that it was a justified mistake. After all, how many people live for years in a loveless marriage, cheating in silence, only with their thoughts? I simply went further. And in this distorted logic that I built, it made me more honest. That gave me the right to continue, to enjoy, to have something of my own after so long being everyone else's. I even thought about ending my marriage cleanly. I thought about talking to Roberto, opening my heart to him, telling him that I was not happy. But there was always something that stopped me, the fear of losing everything, the house, the children, the stability, and, of course, the judgment. I knew that if I said it, I would be the villain. No one would look at the years I was ignored, only the fact that I cheated. So, I postponed it. I pushed it down while I delved deeper into the affair with Ricardo. I thought I could hide it forever. He thought no one would ever know. And maybe, if it were not for that email, the truth would never have come out. The email arrived one normal morning while I was having coffee and reading messages from work. The subject was simple: you need to know this. And in the body of the message, there was only a link and an anonymous sender named Enraged 999. On instinct, I opened it. And there, in front of me, was my life about to implode, a video of me with Ricardo, 3 different angles. The recording began with him standing at the edge of the bed while I was kneeling with my hands on his hips. The side camera clearly showed what was happening: rhythmic, intense oral sex, while he held my hair and moaned softly. Then, the image showed us both naked, me on all fours on the wrinkled sheets while he held me tightly by the hips. "Harder, do not stop, harder," my voice said, almost pleading between loud moans. The video lasted 25 minutes. It showed different positions, laughter, slaps, pulls, indecent phrases. It was not just sex, it was an open, raw, and shameless pleasure. The part that hurt me the most was not even the act itself, But the end, what came after. The front camera caught me throwing myself on the bed, laughing, panting, while I grabbed a face towel, one of those from the bathroom set I bought on sale with Susanna years ago, and I cleaned myself between my legs without stopping smiling. "My God, you came like a bull." "I have never seen so much," I said, still out of breath. Ricardo laughed, lying next to me, with his arm behind his head, satisfied, like someone who has won some dispute. And then, as if he had edited the video, his line came, "And the best part is that they think we are just good friends." We both laughed out loud. We laughed at Roberto, we laughed at Susanna, the whole family laughed. Clear audio. We laughed, we touched, we called each other my love. I almost threw up from nervousness. The world was spinning, my chest tightened, and all I could think was, who did this? Because it was one thing to betray and hide, another thing was to have been caught, and by someone from the inside. I had no time to make excuses. When Roberto came home that afternoon, I knew. He did not shout, nothing was broken. He simply looked at me with a contempt that made me shudder. He said he had seen everything and that it was pointless to deny it. And I, a coward as always, tried. It is a trap, someone wants to hurt us. But he had already shown the video to his sister, Susanna, my best friend. Of course, she knew who the other man in the video was. And then, the storm that I could never contain began. I found myself alone, ridiculously naked before the truth. And even I could not make any more excuses. Susanna came to my house that day. She was unrecognizable, swollen, with red eyes, but cold inside. "You destroyed my family," she said. I tried to say it was not that simple, that the love had ended before the betrayal began. But she did not want to listen. She called me a snake, a traitor, a coward. And I could not defend myself because it was all true. That night was the first one I slept alone, in silence, knowing that what we had built was crumbling and that the ruin would be public, it would be cruel. I just did not imagine that the children, our children, would be the first to turn against me. What hurt me the most was when Javier entered the room with his eyes full of fury and shame. He did not cry. He simply looked at me and said, "You are worse than I thought." That broke something in me. He knew. He had seen the video. And later I would discover that all 5 of them knew. Weeks had passed. They had recorded my conversations with Ricardo. They followed our steps. They entered the rented apartment. They were teenagers, but they planned like adults, like spies. They knew everything and decided to remain silent, waiting for me to confess. I did not confess. So, they exposed me. I discovered that it was Clara who created the fake profile, that Diana helped hide the devices, that Rafa and David had access to my cell phone's tracker. Javier was the one who wrote the email. They saw everything. They heard everything. They knew details that even I did not remember. And the worst part, they did it together, in silence. They organized to finish off Ricardo and me as if we were movie villains. And maybe we were. The humiliation of being discovered was surpassed by the pain of being judged by my own children. There I knew there was no return. That forgiveness, if it came, would take years. Maybe it would never come. Roberto made quick decisions. He changed passwords, blocked cards, removed my name from the accounts. He treated me like an unwanted guest, a ghost in the house that was once mine. The bags appeared in the hallway days later, and next to them, the piercing gazes of the children. The house was silent, but the atmosphere was charged, as if everyone was holding their breath. I walked through the rooms like an intruder. My children passed by me as if I did not exist. Susanna sent a simple message, "You are no longer welcome." And I, for the first time, began to understand the size of the hole I had dug with my own hands. The judicial delivery notification arrived on a Thursday. They handed me the divorce papers at my old job, in front of colleagues who did not even know my marriage was in crisis. A thick, white envelope with my full name in bold. When I opened it and read the words, "Violation of the prenuptial agreement for infidelity demonstrated on video," my hands trembled. At the same time, my boss called me to talk. The video was already circulating among some employees. I do not know who had access, but the images leaked. Nothing on the internet dies in silence. In the office, the smiles disappeared. The looks were full of judgment. I became the woman of the scandal. I tried to keep my head up, but I was shattered inside. In the mothers group from school, no one answered my messages anymore. Some even left the group. People whispered and avoided crossing paths with me at the supermarket. I have become a symbol of shame. Even my own mother called me, crying, asking for explanations. She said the family was being pointed at in masses, that even my great-uncle sent a message asking if it was true. I had no words, only the heavy silence of someone who knows they made a mistake, but there is no turning back. The betrayal was no longer a private matter, now it was a public stain, and I was at the center of it. The clause of the prenuptial agreement was like a guillotine. I vaguely remembered when we signed it years ago, in a cold meeting with Roberto's father, who insisted on including that in case of betrayal, the unfaithful spouse would receive only 20% of the assets and not a penny of alimony. At the time, I thought it was an exaggeration. Now it seemed like a premonition. Besides the shame, I was about to lose everything: house, car, access to the accounts. Roberto did not hesitate. Everything was fast, with the family's lawyer, who seemed to have everything prepared even before confronting me. And I still tried to deny it, even with the image of the video burning in my memory like a hot iron. I tried one last trick. I suggested he reconsider, that he think about the children, that he not let the pain turn into hatred. But he just laughed dryly and said, "You destroyed it long before I realized." I went to the lawyer recommended by a distant friend, who treated me with a mixture of compassion and professionalism. The first thing he asked me was if the video was real. When I confirmed it, he sighed. "With this level of evidence, there is no defense. The best we can try is to avoid further damage." I found myself surrounded, cornered. No lie would save me now. And even if I tried, my children would not allow it. They were on his side. I found myself alone. The final blow was delivered by the teenagers themselves. When Susanna told her children, they already knew. They were helping Roberto organize everything. They packed my clothes, separated documents, listed my assets. She was Diana, my daughter, who looked me in the eyes and said, "You deserve all the consequences." I did not cry in front of her, but shortly after, I collapsed in the bathroom. It was as if all the masks had fallen, as if for the first time in my life they saw me as I really am, a woman who made a mistake, who lied, who chose a fleeting passion and destroyed a home. I wanted to disappear, but I could not because now everyone knew. On Friday, when I went to pick up some belongings, there were 2 vehicles in front of the house. Roberto had requested a restraining order for fear that I would get out of control. There were police waiting for me as if I were a criminal. The neighbors watched from the window. One of the mothers from the condominium even took a picture. I walked to the door with 2 garbage bags with clothes inside, like someone leaving a house that was never theirs. Clara and Diana stayed in the room. They did not even want to see me. It was there that I understood the punishment. It was not losing possessions, it was losing trust, respect, the image of a mother. And no one gets that back. I thought the teenagers were just shocked and hurt. It never crossed my mind that they would be the authors of the collapse I was living through. I only discovered the truth weeks later, when I heard Javier and Rafa talking about apartment 2011. My blood ran cold. I confronted Clara, who had been avoiding me for days. She did not try to deny it. She simply said, "We have known for a long time." It was as if I had been slapped again. I discovered that all 5 of them, my children and nephews, had planned everything. They had followed my steps, installed trackers, recorded conversations, filmed, and finally, sent the video. It all started with Clara and Diana. One day, they stopped by my work to ask for money for the movies and discovered that I had left early. They looked for Ricardo and he was also gone. Curious, they opened the tracking application that I required them to have on their cell phones. They saw that I was at a strange address, an apartment building. They went there, they waited, and they saw us leave together, laughing, holding hands. The shock was immediate. But instead of confronting us, they told their siblings and cousins everything. And together, they decided to spy on us. They said they wanted to protect their family. Deep down, they wanted justice. They used their accumulated allowance to buy hidden cameras with motion detection and microphones with voice activation. They installed the devices when they got a copy of the key they saw with me. David and Rob, the more technical ones, handled the electronics. Diana created a fake email, enraged 999 feet, a mix of an inside joke and sincere anger. And it was through this profile that they sent the video to Roberto. They knew exactly what they were doing. There were recordings, photographs, audios, and even bank trails. They broke into computers, accessed documents, copied notes from hidden accounts, all with a terrifying coldness. The worst part is that they thought of everything. When they found documents of accounts in my name and Ricardo's in another city, they decided to act. They took photographs, recorded videos, and then transferred the money, more than 210,000 Mexican pesos, to the bank accounts that their grandparents had opened for each of them under the name of college savings. They used my own data. They used what they knew about me. When I realized, it was too late. They had protected the family assets, yes. But at the same time, they punished me without shouting, without offending, only with a cold and decisive action. They did not want me to suffer. They wanted me to feel what they felt, betrayal. At first, I thought about suing, shouting, confronting them all. But I could not. A part of me admired them for their intelligence, for their unity, for their courage. They did what most adults would never do. They protected each other from me and Ricardo. I raised them to be strong, autonomous, and just. And I was defeated precisely by the qualities I helped cultivate. Seeing the videos they had edited, with date, time, location, and transcription, made me realize how prepared they were. How could they deal with all that in silence while I lied shamelessly at home? They just waited for the right moment. What destroyed me was when Clara said, "We just did not tell you before because we wanted you to have the chance to repent." That broke something inside me, because it was true. They waited, they tested me, they watched me, and I failed at every opportunity to do the right thing. I was not caught by accident. I was taken down by those who knew me best, my children, my nephews. The young people I thought were too distracted to notice anything, they became my judges. And I, defenseless, had to accept the sentence. They no longer saw me as a mother, they saw me as a traitor. And maybe that was exactly what I was. The first hearing was surreal. I entered the forum feeling the weight of every look. Everyone knew. The lawyers greeted each other formally, but I saw the veiled judgment in their eyes. When I sat next to Ricardo, I felt his trembling hand brush mine. He was also scared. Not of the judge, but of the truth being repeated out loud in front of witnesses, documents, and children. Roberto was impassive, in a dark suit and his chin up, as if he already knew the outcome. Susanna, at his side, held a folder of documents with an almost cruel firmness. I did not want to be there, but I could not run away either. The judge was strict, practical, and made it clear from the beginning, here we do not judge feelings, we judge facts. I presented my statement with shame, trying to seem worthy. But the judge had already seen the videos, heard the audios, and read the emails. He said that the evidence of infidelity was undeniable and offensive. When mentioning the prenuptial agreement, he reinforced that the clause was valid. Since I had cheated, I would only be entitled to 20% of the shared assets, without alimony, no possibility of further negotiation. I tried to argue, but I was silenced. "You had freedom and you abused it," he said. It was the hardest blow I have ever received in that court. When the judge addressed the custody of the children, my stomach turned. Diana and Clara had sent letters asking to live with their father. The words were simple but cutting. "I lost trust in my mother. I feel safer with my father." My nephews also chose Susanna. None of the 5 wanted to live with me. They all positioned themselves with absurd clarity, as if it were natural. It was as if, symbolically, I had died to them. The judge considered the teenagers' wishes and transferred full custody to Roberto and Susanna. There would only be scheduled visits if they wanted to see me. And at the moment, they did not want to. The assets were also exposed. The secret accounts that Ricardo and I opened with more than 210,000 Mexican pesos were tracked. All the money was in the children's accounts. The judge considered this an act of ethical correction on the part of the minors and determined that the amounts would remain in their hands. We argued that they had accessed the data illegally, but the judge replied, It is illegal to hide assets during a stable union. His words burned. Ricardo tried to protest, but he was ignored. We were portrayed as accomplices in a petty plot. And maybe we were. Now it was official. The most humiliating part was when they asked us if we wanted to present any evidence to defend ourselves. Ricardo looked at me, sweating, and muttered, "It is not worth it." That was the end. We admitted in front of everyone that the betrayal was real, that we had hidden accounts, we lied, we cheated. The sentence came quickly. In addition to losing custody, I would have to pay child support, 18.00 Mexican pesos per month for 3 years, plus 4.00 per month per daughter until they turn 18. Ricardo was sentenced to even larger amounts. I left the court owing more than I could pay and emptier than I thought possible. When we left, none of the children wanted to look at me. Diana passed by me as if I were a stranger. Rafa took Susanna's hand. Javier put on his headphones and simply ignored me. I went to the car and cried alone for an hour before I could start the engine. Ricardo was silent the whole way, staring into space. For the first time, I saw in him the weight of what we had done. But it was too late. We had lost everything, not just possessions, custody, or money, but love, respect, position within the family. And no court sentence would be more painful than that. We moved to a smaller town where nobody knew us. Ricardo and I shared a small apartment, far from what we were used to. The furniture came from donations and secondhand sales. We slept on mattresses on the floor for weeks. He got a job in an export warehouse and earned a third of what he used to earn. I, out of shame of returning to the health sector in the region, accepted a position as an assistant in a popular clinic. The uniform was tight, the salary barely covered the bills, and the manager treated me like an intern. But I had no choice. The only thing left was to start over from the bottom. The debts began to accumulate quickly. The court-defined pensions crushed us month after month. We had to choose between paying the rent or sending the money to Roberto and Susanna. The most painful part was knowing that it went directly to my children, and it still hurt me, not because of the money, but because they did not want to talk to me. Even when I did everything, Clara rejected my birthday present. Diana blocked my number. Javier changed his last name on social media. I called, I left messages, I wrote letters. All in vain. They did not want contact. And every time I saw a notification and it was not from them, my chest sank further. Ricardo and I started to fight. At first, we tried to maintain hope. "Let us get out of this," he said. But the wear and tear came quickly. I blamed him for the idea of hiding the money. He blamed me for getting caught. We were silent for days. Sex is gone, laughter too. We spent more time looking at the ceiling than at each other. I knew he also missed his children, his nephews, the life we had. And deep down, we knew that our union was made of ruins, ruins of what we destroyed. When he started sleeping in the living room, I understood that what is born from a lie does not flourish. He was pulling away. I received a photo of the family from the old condominium group. It was a party in Susanna's backyard, with all the children, parents, and grandparents gathered. Roberto smiled. My children were there, laughing, eating, wearing the same clothes I once bought. That destroyed me more than any hearing, any debt, any public humiliation. They had replaced me, not physically, but emotionally. That woman who was once the center of the family was now an echo of the past, forgotten, turned off. I cried for hours with my cell phone in my hand and only stopped when I realized that no one would come to comfort me. I tried to write in a diary again to keep myself sane, but the only thing that came out was anger at myself. I would wake up in the middle of the night, dreaming that my children were looking at me with contempt. In some, they pushed me off a cliff. In others, they saw me but acted as if I did not exist. I started having anxiety attacks. I went to a psychologist, but I could not continue the treatment. The health plan we had before had been canceled and paying for the sessions was impossible. I found myself looking at myself in the mirror with disgust. How could I let all that happen? How could I turn my back on everything I myself had built? The truth that accompanies me every day is simple and cruel. I destroyed everything and no one did it for me. It was not Ricardo, it was not Roberto, not Susanna. Not the children either. I made choice by choice, lie by lie. Now I live my days as someone serving a sentence, but without visible bars. The city is small, but the punishment is enormous. Work, eat, sleep, repeat. Without a voice, without a shine, without forgiveness. Only the weight. And when I see Ricardo smoking on the balcony in silence, I realize that he knows it too. It was not worth it. None of it was worth it. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night, feeling that everything was a nightmare, that I am still in that big house, that the children are sleeping in the rooms next door, and that in the morning I make coffee while Roberto reads the newspaper on the balcony. But it is enough to open my eyes and see the peeling walls of this suffocating apartment to remember, I broke everything. Going back in time has become a useless obsession. I relive every step of the fall, every deleted message, every created excuse, every time I chose silence over truth. I created my own ruin and now I am forced to live among its rubble. I think a lot about what would have happened if I had spoken, if you had looked my husband in the eyes and told him, I am not happy. Maybe we would have fought, maybe he would have been scared, but maybe, just maybe, things would not have gone so far. Because what destroyed it was not just the adultery, it was the cowardice, the choice to cheat instead of confronting, invading the space that belonged to my best friend, my family, my own house. Nothing justifies what I did. No desire, no need, no moment of pleasure. I hurt those who loved me the most, and I will carry this until my last day. If they asked me today what I want most, it would not be to have the money back, or the house, or even the old, comfortable life. I wanted to hear my daughter call me mommy without resentment. I wanted to see my son looking at me with pride, not with disgust. I wanted Susanna to call me to gossip about some nonsense. I wanted to sit with Roberto on the balcony and say, I am tired. But these things are no longer within my reach. And maybe they never will be again. I burned the bridges, I burned each one with my own hands. And now I live on the other side of the abyss that I myself dug. Some people say that time heals. I do not believe that anymore. Time does not heal, it simply moves away. The memories are getting dusty, yes. But the pain, that simply changes shape. Today, it is no longer the scream, it is silence, the absence, the coldness on birthdays, the ignored messages, the invitations that never arrive. And every time I see an old frame, I wonder if one day I will be forgiven or if I will only be remembered as the mistake, the woman who destroyed her own family in the name of an empty and fleeting passion, a woman who traded the essential for the ego. If I could talk to someone who was about to do what I did, I would only say one thing: stop now. As tempting as it may seem, as alive as you may feel at first, the fall is long and painful. It is not worth it. Nothing is worth the cold looks of your children, the contempt of those you loved, the suffocating loneliness. Once the pleasure is over, betrayal seems sweet when it begins, but it demands an endless price. I have paid and I continue to pay with emotional interest, with sleepless nights, with guilt that does not disappear. If you think no one will get hurt, believe me, they will. And the first one to bleed will be you. Today, I move forward by instinct. I work, I pay bills, I breathe. But my soul was trapped in the past. I do not know if I will ever be a whole person again. I became what I feared most, a woman forgotten by those who mattered most to me. Ricardo still shares the same roof, but he is just a physical presence. We are two survivors of a disaster that we caused together. Sometimes we look at each other, and we do not even need to say anything. We know. We know that we destroyed two entire families to survive a mistake. And now we just have to live with it. Just emptiness and aware that there is no return for those who chose to get lost.